You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. I have with me the fabulous and wonderful Mor Yelvington. I said that right? Right? Didn't I? Yes, okay. It's a little bit of a tricky spelling last name, but I think we got it. But I came on Mor's podcast, Moms Talk Sex, a couple of weeks ago to talk about sexual trauma and how to heal that. And so definitely go check that out on her podcast as well. But today she's coming on our podcast, especially where, we love talking about boundaries and how boundaries help us not only build a life and a business, but especially that sexual boundary and how creative that can help us be. But when we have all this sexual trauma, actually that can create one of the biggest roadblocks to creating money and creating business success, especially for women. And so I invited Mor to come on and talk with us about that today. So thank you, Mor, for coming and chatting with us today. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and I love the vibe. So, like you kind of said, I help women heal sexual trauma that's stuck in the body so they can feel safe and seen in their body again. And one of the biggest things that I do is really re-educate people about what sexual trauma is, because it's like in our reality, it seems like we go with the mundane, not mundane, let me rephrase that. We go with what we know as rape or sexual abuse, being sexually harassed.
Mhm.
But what happens with women, and the way I describe sexual trauma, is everywhere that you cut off your sexuality from yourself, everywhere you cut
Yes.
off that connection to your sex, to your sexual being, to your female feminine energy and organs. And what does that look like? You could have given birth and it was a very traumatic experience. You could have tried to give birth for many, many years and needed intervention, and that made you feel very ashamed of your body, and so you disconnected from it. It could be being in a marriage and your husband watching porn. It could be after a nasty divorce. It could be the first time you wanted to have sex and it wasn't a great experience you wanted it to be. It could
Yeah.
be being born in this beautiful female body, and then religion is like, don't look at your body, don't touch your body, it's full of shame and blame, but then you need to get married and have kids, right? So there's so many ways that us as women cut off our connection to our sex, to our sexuality, and that
Yes.
to me is sexual trauma. And so
Yes.
what I do, and I've been doing that for over 18 years with women, is really helping them clear that trauma, be aware of it, change change the way we view it, the way we feel it, the way we see it, so you can be present in your body and start receiving. I love that you brought up the idea of we're cutting off, that when we have sexual trauma, it's hard for us in our businesses and money. And that's because it's all about receiving. The minute you cut off this part of you, you're cutting off the part of you that receives. And
Yes.
so, even though you want to make money and you want your business to succeed, if you're not willing to receive from the outside in, then you're going to be blocking that stuff. And so much of that is subconscious and energetic in your body.
Yes, and that's so true. Because, I'm coming from, the world of betrayal trauma, right? Like helping women heal from betrayal trauma. And, I still love those women. I still really, really want to help them. And so what I've been doing is I've been coaching other coaches how to take over that side of things so I can work more with the female entrepreneur, right? But it's fascinating. You're absolutely right, because one of the biggest things I noticed, right, is when they first started coming to me, like they were struggling up the yin yang with money. Like money was such a struggle bus for them and they could not figure out why. But their biggest concerns were also their husband's pornography habits, right? The sexual trauma. And so they didn't realize, and I didn't even like cognitively connect the dots at that point, like when I first started coaching, but they had cut themselves off from receiving. Exactly. Right. And money is such a receive and give type of an energy. And when we're afraid of what we receive, if we're scared of the receiving energy, yeah, that's one of the things that first things that gets blocked is money. But I
Yeah, and
noticed,
yeah, well, the thing is
right?
energetically, right? So this is interesting, right? Because energetically, we have the masculine and the feminine energies. And the masculine is the giver and the feminine is the receiver, right? That's how the energies work. So if to you, receiving is painful, hurtful, you're going to block it any way you can subconsciously. And you're cutting that part of you off, which means you're cutting so much of you off. So even when you're out in the world and you want to promote your business, there's so much of you that's still hiding because you're scared to be seen in your body when some of you is
Mm-hmm.
not even in your body, right? And so it's really about making your body feel safe again so you can be present in your body because so many of us are walking around disconnected and not present in our body.
Yes, and it's so true. It really is. And I'll tell you, like, it's also fascinating to watch the other side of, like, when they really honestly started the healing process and they started healing from this betrayal trauma or sexual trauma, really, that's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
They started healing from this, and all of a sudden, like, all this money started coming to them. And I noticed that, and I was like, huh, what about that, right? Like, and I'll tell you the coolest story. I had one client, and when she first started, she was really, really struggling with money. She decided to take a risk on herself, like she decided to put a financial risk on herself and start healing this. And so she decided to invest with me, right? Well, it was crazy because within the first 3 months of our coaching, she had made that investment back, but she still had a car payment. She had about $7,000 left, and she was making that car payment like $800 a year, a month. Sorry, and she's like, I've only got like about 10 more months. I'll have this paid off. I'm gonna be super happy. And it was insane. One day, she went to go make the payment, and there was no payment to be made. It said paid in full, and she's like, "What just happened?" Right? Like, no, I still have like $7,000 left on this car. What happened? Right?
Yeah.
And she called the bank, and this is the story they told her. Some guy walks in their bank with $50,000, and he says, I am so grateful for this. I've just come into a lot of cash, and I want to do some good for people." And so he put that $50,000 towards different different people's loans, and her loan was one that got paid off. Just like that. Right? And it's like, holy cow, where did that come from? Right? And so now, not only does she have that extra $800 a month, right? Like she's receiving so much more. Like, holy heck, what a
That's
cool story,
amazing.
right? And it comes from healing this piece of ourselves, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
really, really accepting these pieces of ourselves, loving these pieces of ourselves, right? Because the other side of this was also realizing that the reason why, and not to try to offend anybody, but I think that the reason why this sexual trauma is so bad, and it's kind of like you were hitting on, it's because it requires us to abandon ourselves to some degree,
Oh, yeah, 100%. You
right?
cut so much of you off.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're cut off, you can't be in your power.
Mm-mm.
And you can't attract what you want to attract. And you can't bring in what you want to bring in because half of you or 90% of you is not present, is not there.
Yeah. Yes,
And
exactly.
so when you experience sexual trauma, it's almost like the abuser or the person that was involved takes away some of your power. You give them some of your power in the process. And
Yes.
so what I really do is really help my clients clear it and then bring back their power and reconnect to that essence of who they are. And that's the major shift because suddenly you're like, whoa, where have I been my whole life? Right?
Yes. And I love that you said that like it's almost like taking something from you. And this is like where we're getting into that sexual boundary piece, right? Because I also have another really adorable client, and she was raped several times and then finally decided what's the point, right? And she started sleeping with her boyfriends a lot. And she came to me and just feeling very low, right? Just very low in herself. And I started kind of like watching and paying attention. And what I've noticed too about like that type of energy and having a low sexual boundary is sex is like you said, such a give and receive type of an action and energy. And so when we're having sex with several people, or it causes us to have to give way too much of ourselves, right? And we're taking on too many people. We're taking on too many things. And so this is one of the reasons why I say like having a good healthy sexual boundary is so key because it keeps you in yourself. You know what I mean? So
Oh,
how do
yeah,
we
100%. And what I would say is also that so many times when we are disconnected from ourselves, we're looking for things outside of us to fill that void.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so a lot of times, because, for example, a lot of times women that experience sexual trauma, it's or they don't want to have sex at all,
Mm-hmm.
or they have over amount of sex, right? So they need to fill that void, and the only way they know how to feel valued, how to feel worth it, is by being with men. It doesn't matter how the men treat them. It's like the more men I can be with, that's the only way I feel valued. I feel loved. I feel full. I feel connected because she's so disconnected from herself.
Yeah.
And so that's where that healing work comes from. It's also when we get hurt and somebody hurts us, then there's another piece of like, I'm going to go revenge on these other guys. So many times I have to do a lot of work with my clients, especially if they're married. How much of what's going on in your relationship is actually punishing your husband for the things that happened to you in the past
Yep.
from other men without even knowing it? Because as women, we just kind of categorize it. We don't mean to do it, but energetically, it's just like he's a man. So all this stuff is going to go on to him. If we
Yeah.
came from a relation from a family that the dad was absent, or the things that happen with your dad or your grandparent, a lot of times that shows up too as well when you're in a relationship. And the thing is when you finally find that guy that does love you for who you are, takes you for all everything you've been through, is there for you and wants to support you, so many times it's so hard for us to even feel that and to
Yeah.
accept it because we're so disconnected. And then
Yeah.
what happens is we end up kind of taking out everything we've been through on them. And then
Mm.
you have people that end up getting divorced and end up having a lot of issues in their marriage and not having any intimacy and not having sex because they're so scared to actually feel that they're worth it for who they are because they can't even fathom the idea
Yeah.
because so much of them is gone. And so
Yeah.
that's really when the healing is so important because you are just not aware of how much of you is not there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And and this is something else, it's obviously my husband and I talk a lot about sex, right? Because we're married. But one of the things that I explained to him, when healing from the betrayal trauma that I had, and then also like the trauma that his pornography addiction had manifest, like his trauma manifested in a pornography addiction, let's say that, okay? And so, talking to him about this, one of the things I told him was that beautiful sex is about completely being seen and completely being desired, right? And wanting that deep, deep connection that nobody else can have, right? That's what the culmination of love is in a married couple, in that sexual connection. And it was kind of like a light bulb moment for him. He's like, "Oh, that makes so much sense." But again, it's because I think that we just don't talk about this stuff enough, right?
Yeah.
And I think even just the very idea of that can create a whole lot of sexual trauma, right? I
Mhm.
remember I remember the first time I was in college and doing some sort of a human anatomy course, and that was the first time I'd ever seen the male anatomy, and I was traumatized. I was like, what? Right? Like, what just happened? But again, it was because we have like this quote unquote purity culture happening. And hey, I'm all about purity, but not talking about things doesn't create purity. It creates fear,
So much fear and so much
right?
shame and so much blame.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, like I said before, right? You're born with this beautiful body. And literally what you have between your legs is the gate to heaven. You create people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We're women. We create people. We have the most amazing anatomy in the world, but we're told to hate it, not to look at it, not to touch it. It's all full of shame and guilt, and all that stems into us, and then we're just like, okay, we don't want anything to do with it. But then you're supposed to get married and know how to pleasure your husband. You're supposed to know how to have children. You were
Mm-hmm.
born with this part of you in order to use it. So the fact that we're not allowed to even deal with it is like 100% sexual trauma. And a
Yeah.
lot of it, I have to tell you, like, a lot of my clients come because they come from a religious background that it was very taboo. And so
Mm-hmm.
they were really traumatized. And when they got married, their husbands literally raped them because they didn't even, I don't even think they knew what they were supposed to do, how they were supposed to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it creates so much fear, so much stress in your body, and you're just disconnected, and that doesn't help anything or anybody. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the purity culture, it's really not serving anybody. It's just putting so much more shame on women. And instead of just saying, "Hey, this is your body. It's beautiful. Let's learn about it. Let's see what it can do for you. How can you experience it? How can you learn to receive with it?" Instead of shutting it down. Can you
Yeah.
imagine what our world will look like if we had women walking around confident in their bodies and
Yes.
loving their bodies and not being ashamed of anything that they have? It would
Yes.
be a different world.
Yes, so it totally would be. I'm also like a big proponent of like quote unquote modesty because, in growing up, and I'm still very religious. I still go to church every week, very active in my religion, but I still remember like the shame that came with, don't wear a bikini, or don't let your tummy show, or don't wear short shorts or things like that. And like I am actually a big proponent of modesty because not because of the shame, but I think it's because it's respect. And that's the difference, right? That's the shift in this. If we're taught modesty from the shameful perspective, oh, you know, cover your body because men cannot control their thoughts if it's uncovered or anything like that, or if you show a little bit of navel or anything like that. No, I believe in modesty because I respect myself, right? I don't think like because that body is so precious, because it's so beautiful, because it is so grand, I don't think that it has to be on display for everyone to see. You know what I mean? So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that because that's one of my personal boundaries, like sexual boundaries, is yes, I do dress modestly because I respect myself, right? What are your
It's so
thoughts on that?
interesting because I feel like men don't have that restriction. Men never think twice if they need to be modest. So why do women?
That
And
is a
I
good question.
understand not showing, you know, too much cleavage or whatever. But on the other hand, why do you need to show? Why do you need to hide your body? Why? Why do you have to be modest? I come from a Jewish background, and in the Jewish religion, a lot of women, they cover their hair or they have wigs. They can't
Mm,
show, and it's the same idea. But in my opinion, it's like, but why the men don't have to do that? And so that makes a separation. We're all, in my opinion, energetically equal. And when we tell somebody you need to hide your body, that
yeah.
makes you that makes you less powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
it says you have to hide your body because the man won't be able to handle himself correctly.
Right.
What
And
kind of
that's
message
coming
are
from
we
that
sending?
shame,
And
right? That's
that's
that
what,
shame
yeah.
culture. But
And
what do
think
you,
about how many religions around the earth right now have that. How many women
mm-hmm.
literally can't show their bodies at all? And to me, that's not modesty. That means it tells you, shut up. We don't want to hear you. We don't want to see you. We can't handle you. We can't handle your beauty. We can't handle your power. So you need to shut it down and you need to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If our energies in this world were equal, just like Adam and Eve, when they were walking around naked and it was all good, right? It was, right? We could say that. If we felt good in our bodies, men and women, we wouldn't have that. We wouldn't
That,
have that power struggle. We
that,
wouldn't have to worry what a man would do to me if I wear a skirt that's a little too short.
yeah.
But again, right? I feel like as a woman, I can respect myself in my power no matter what I wear, as long as I wear it because I feel empowered in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're saying I like to cover my body, that makes me feel powerful. If you're going to wear a super short skirt because that's what's going to give you attention, then that's not coming from a powerful place. That's coming from a trauma reaction. So you
Thank
need to
you.
ask yourself, right? You
Yes.
need to ask yourself, why am I wearing this outfit? What is the message I'm trying to portray? Am I resisting something with this outfit? Right? So we need to pay attention to why we do things and what is the place that we're doing them from. But on a whole, I truly believe will be a way better world if women could just wear what they wanted and they didn't have to think twice about what would happen to them if they walk down the street at night, right? If they could say what they wanted to say, if they didn't have to hide their beautiful hair because their men can't handle it,
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
world where we can all be free, a world where you need to tell a woman that she needs to hide behind her clothes and her outfits because you can't handle yourself is not a free world. That's just another way to shut you down.
Yes. And I would agree with you on that subject. Unfortunately, that is the world we do live in, though. Like, I think that because, it's one thing I've even mentioned on this podcast before too. Like, it's not against, like, I'm definitely for women and things like that, but the world is such a volatile place for us, especially, right? Because if you take a look at the statistics and things like that, and I'm not blaming women at all for like the way they dress or anything like that. If somebody assaults you, that's on them. A hundred and
100%.
ten thousand percent. It doesn't matter what people wear. Like you can be half naked, you can be dressed from head to toe, right? You could be
Yep.
wearing something that like Muslim women wear, and all you can see is their eyes. Like they still. It doesn't matter. It is such a different place for us as women. Right. And I think that we do have to have some acknowledgement of that specifically. Not that it's our job to control a man's thoughts. I don't believe that. I absolutely don't believe that. But I do think that, respecting yourself is also understanding the kind of situations we're in because statistically, it is women and children that are the most preyed upon and the ones that end up being the ones that have the most sexual trauma, right? Because of the predatory aspects of this world, unfortunately, right? And so I
Yeah,
think
but I
yeah,
believe that I truly believe that the work that we're doing right now is what's going to change it. Why is that?
yeah,
Because the masculine energy on our planet is so high and the feminine is so low at this point. But the more that women heal and the more that women do this work, there's going to be a balance. And the more we are in balance, the less men are going to need to take away that power.
Yes.
And that's what it is energetically. I truly believe that, right? But the thing is that as women, we buy into it. We buy into the fact that we're not as strong, that we're not as powerful, that we're not equal.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying equal in terms of we both can do the same thing. Because to me, that's different, right? You were born
Yeah.
with a male body. I was born with a woman body for different reasons. But I'm talking energetically. Energetically, there's this idea that
Yeah.
women are powerless. And
Yes.
if we raise women that feel that way, and then they get abused, and that reinforces that. So what are you doing? You're creating a society of women that feel like they need to be
I
hidden
agree.
and they deserve to be abused. But the more of us heal that and we transmute that to our children, I believe, even through our uterus when we give birth, right? Like if you were abused and you give birth, your child's going to carry some of that with them.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important as moms to do this work, because we'd really heal it
Especially.
for generations forward and back. And really stopping that. And the more of us do that, then we raise the vibration, because we are these like energetical beings, and the
Hmm.
energy just goes through us. So we raise it all together.
I completely agree with that. Like, completely agree with that. Because the thing is, and again, that's another statistic if you look at that. They, and this might be a little grotesque, but they went in and did a study with rapists in prisons, right? And without fail, every single one of them said that they watched for the woman that has the least amount of confidence.
Yeah.
And that was the one they went after because she was less likely to speak. She was less likely to talk. She was more likely to blame herself. They knew this, right? They know this stuff. And so that's the one that they targeted. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like when we really step into our confident energies and we love ourselves as women, we love our femininity. We love it. It's not weak at all. Softness is not weakness. As a matter
No.
of fact, as a matter of fact, I've known women who are very, very confident. They have some of the most kick butt energy that I have ever seen. And I'm like, yes, like rooting them on. I'm like, yeah, 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 do that, right? And it's a beautiful thing. It is so
Yeah.
beautiful because honestly, somebody that is predatory is cowardly
Yeah.
and they don't want to deal with that type of an energy. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
And
right.
this is the thing, right? Like if you get married and you're already coming into the marriage feeling like you're in a disadvantage, then you won't speak up. Then you
Hmm.
won't say what you want. Then you'll be ashamed to tell your husband how you want to be touched, how you want to be feel, how do you want to feel, right? And it starts way before that, like we talked about before. So if you're raised where you can't explore your body, you don't even know what you like and what feels
Yeah.
good to you, but you
Yeah.
can't even talk about it. And so even then, when you're in a relationship with somebody that's supposed to really love you and you're supposed to really be you, a lot of times you don't even know what that is. You
Yeah.
don't even know what that looks like, what it feels like. I remember the first time I had sex with my boyfriend, one of my boyfriends, when I was in you know college or whatever, high school, and I didn't orgasm. It was the first time I didn't orgasm, right?
Hmm.
And I remember laying there and I was like, "What was that?" And he was
Hmm.
like, "What do you mean?" I said, I didn't orgasm. And he said, "Oh, I didn't realize." I'm like, "Well, you need to get to work because I'm not going to just lay here without orgasm. Like, we're both in this together." I was able to just speak out, but so many women don't. They'll just fake it. They'll just wait for it to be over with. They just do it because they have to, because they're married. And when you do all those things, the message that you put out into the world is, I don't matter. My voice doesn't matter. I don't count. My pleasure isn't important. Those are all the messages that you're saying, even if you're not saying it out loud. That's
Yeah,
the
that's true.
energy. That's the energy you're putting out. It's victim energy.
Hmm.
When do you change from being a victim? When you raise your voice, when you choose for yourself, when you speak out, when you stop just accepting things for how they are, even though you're not happy with them, and you change them. And so the only person that can do that for you is you. And when you
Hmm.
start doing that for yourself, you start inspiring other women. I remember when I just gave birth to my first daughter and I had joined a mommy group. And I was celebrating my birthday, and my husband, he decorates the house and he gets me gifts. Like we do this whole, he does this whole thing. We do it for each other. And one of the moms was like, "How do you get your husband to do that for you?" And I said, "What do you mean? Like it's my birthday. Why would he not do that for me?" And she's like, "Oh, my husband just, he never doesn't even think about those things."
No.
And I was like, that's interesting because to me, that's something that's just a given, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I said to her, if your husband doesn't do this for you, and you set an example, you this for him, right? You decorate the house for him, you make a big deal out of his birthday, but then it comes your birthday, nothing happens. You need to say that. I expect for my birthday for the house to be decorated. Just like you'll say, I expect that we have sex. I want to orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
If we have sex, I want to have fun. I want to have pleasure in my body, right?
Mm-hmm.
I deserve to go out with my girlfriends once a week. I
Yes.
desire to have 30 minutes for me time. When you get home from work, I'm going for a walk for myself. But so many women don't do that. We just push aside our desires. We push aside what we desire, what we want, what we need,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't feel like we deserve it. So it all stems back to receiving. And the biggest
Mm-hmm.
thing you need to learn to receive is you. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can't receive you on that deep level and choose you, nobody can really give to you because you're not
Yes.
you're not open to receiving.
Yes, and I love what you're saying here because the thing is it's so right. You need to voice your desire. And when you let somebody else be pleasured by you, but you're not speaking up for what you want, right? That's you're right. Like that's victim mentality. That's actually expectation mentality in a lot of ways. But being intentional is making that request, right?
Hmm.
And this
Yeah.
is where we're like this is where we get into this boundary aspect of things because it's same thing with the business, right? If you let your clients decide the prices, if you let your clients decide the time and you're not speaking up for you, that business does not last very long. And it's the same thing. I think you're onto something really big here because when you don't speak up in your relationships too, you're with your husband, with your business partners, et cetera, and talk about your not your needs, your desires, even in with your coaches. Like, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times I hear from potential clients. I've already worked with coaches and I didn't get anywhere, right? And I ask them, I'm like, well, did you try to communicate that to them? Right? And they were like, "Well, I tried, but they just told me it was a great question to bring it to the next call. And when we did the next call, they didn't address it, and I just left it at that." And I'm like, "No, like there's a if we want to hold people accountable, right? We first and foremost have to be accountable to ourselves,
Yep.
right?" And this is a wonderful way to get into the sexual boundaries here because speaking up about what it is you want, right? Speaking
Yeah.
up about the things that you like, right? Speaking up about the things you don't like, right?
Yeah.
Speaking up.
Speaking up and teaching your kids to also speak up, because when you don't, you're raising a whole generation of
Yeah.
people pleasers that don't care for themselves. And that creates more of this allowance for somebody to come in and take it from you because they
Yeah.
see you as powerless.
Yeah.
They see you as powerless. I think you can see this in your relationships. Just look at like maybe your group of girlfriends or even your children. There's one kid that maybe not that they're less powerful, but they have like a lower energy. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that kid, you'll notice you have a lot more issues with them because your power is trying to overcome that gap because they're not standing up to your energy level.
Or they're not
There's
standing
a
up for
gap
themselves, right?
because they're
Yeah.
not spending up to themselves and because they're not choosing themselves, or they go into like all the time whining, right? A lot of times
Mm-hmm.
one of those kids can be like a more whiny kid, the more sensitive kid. And so when they are like that, it means their energy level is lower. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then as parents, we tend, it's almost like energetically you have to fill that void. It's the same with what we're feeling as women, but it's a collective. And so when you have such a huge amount of women feeling so low, it just lowers everything down. It goes back to, you have to raise that up. We have to raise strong women to feel confident in their body. And the only way to do that is by really choosing you and healing that. I call this your powerhouse, right? When you experience sexual trauma, your powerhouse is damaged. And when
Yeah.
it's damaged, it's almost like, imagine having a balloons with all these little holes in them and all the air comes out. That's what you're feeling anxious.
You've
That's what you're feeling
deflated.
overwhelmed.
That's why we
You're
call it
deflated.
deflated. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And the thing
yes.
is, even though your body generates energy all the time, if your powerhouse has holes in it, you keep getting deflated. All that energy is
Mm-hmm.
going out. Instead of staying in and fueling your body and fueling your energy. So that's what you get so tired. That's why you have insomnia. That's why you have anxiety. That's why you have stress. Your body is telling you there's something off balance. And a lot
Yes.
of times it has to do with your sexual organs, because that's where you cultivate a lot of your power.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're spot on. You're spot on. And we cultivate a lot of our power. And the thing is what we don't realize as women is because we hold the desire, we are so crazy powerful. So
Yes,
crazy powerful, right? Yes, it's so crazy powerful because we do hold that desire,
we
right?
are the creators.
Mm-hmm.
We are the creators.
Mm-hmm.
The male, they're but the providers.
Mm-hmm.
They provide and we create, right? You know that
Mm-hmm.
saying, like, give a woman a house, she'll make it a home. Give her a sperm, she'll make a child. Like, right? We create. But when you cut off the part of you that creates,
Mm-hmm.
what is left for you?
Right. Destruction.
Yeah. And
And
what are you
isn't
creating from? You're not creating from your true self. You're not creating from your true knowing. You're looking outside of you to create the feeling you want to
exactly.
feel inside. And that's why things
Exactly.
aren't working. You're looking, oh, this looks cool. I'm going to try this. Oh, this looks cool. I'm going to try this. But you're here with very special gifts. You're here with very special powers. And if you're disconnected from them, then you can't bring them to fruition. You can't create them.
Exactly. Yes, you're spot on. And I think that's a really big key ingredient here too is like understanding the difference between creation and destruction. And like I have seen women, and I'm not going to get into names because I could offend somebody there, and that's not what I want to do with this podcast. But I have seen women who are so amazing, and they are so powerful, right? And they're so in that creative energy. But then I have also turned around and I've watched women who are have a powerful position in society, but man, are they into destruction.
Yeah.
Right? Like, holy cow, like she's on a warpath, right?
Yeah.
And it's true, like hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And it's true. When we are not feeling connected to that piece of ourselves, that creation center, right? Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. So, what can we do? Like, what are some sexual boundaries that we can start implementing now to help us start to open up that creation center again? Like, for me, again, respecting myself, right? Like, what does respecting myself look like? And like you said, it's different for everybody. Like, for me, if I wore a short skirt, I would be like, oh man, like super uncomfortable, like trying to push that thing to the floor, right? Like doing everything I can do. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable in that, right? But for someone else, they might feel very comfortable in that midriff or something a bit more revealing, right? Again, I have a lot of women that I deeply, deeply love that do feel comfortable in those things. And I'm not trying to shame or guilt them or anything like that. But what do you think are some of the greatest things, like boundaries that we can start setting right now to help open up that creation center again for us, not for anyone?
Yeah. So first of all, this is what I do. I actually do this every morning. The first thing I do is I thank God for being alive because I think that's really important for another day,
Gratitude.
right?
I agree.
Gratitude, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
second, I kind of take a deep breath in with myself and I put a hand on my heart and just ask, like, how much of me is present right now at this moment? And I get a
I love
percentage.
that.
I give a percentage. How much of me is present? Oh, it's only 50%. Okay. How much of me can come back right now? And noticing how much of you can you bring back and getting an awareness. Okay, I'm not that present in my body. How can I be more present in my body? And then when I'm this present in my body, what does my body require? What does it desire right now?
Mm-hmm.
What can I say? What can I say for myself? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where can I speak up? And if I can't speak up on this and it's really bugging me, why can't I speak up on it? Really
Mm-hmm.
getting an awareness. So I would say first, gratitude, always gratitude for where you are. We tend to jump into judgment so much. And when you're in gratitude, you can't be in judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So stay in your gratitude,
I
be
agree with that.
present, be present in your body, and then ask the questions, right? So what is this look like for me? What does this sex life look like for me? What am I willing to tolerate? What am I not willing to tolerate anymore? What am I done? You are as young as you're going to be right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting any younger. So how much more of your life are you going to waste not speaking up your truth, not being happy, not feeling fulfilled, not feeling healthy in your body, not being satisfied with your relationship? How many more
Yes.
years are you going to waste on it? So the first boundary is really deciding what you want. And maybe you've never asked yourself
That.
that, but asking, what do I really want? What am I willing to give up? And what am I not willing to give up here? And
I
then
love
what am
that.
I going to do with that? Right? What am I going to
Mm-hmm.
do here? And so many women, we just, especially moms, we just go, 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 go. But if you just take that time, wake up 15 minutes before you normally do, have that 15 minutes for you to really go through this process with yourself. You'll be amazed at what shows up and how it changes the world because you'll stop letting life lead you and you'll start leading your own life. And
Mm-hmm.
so many of us, we just get on that hamster wheel and we just go. And it becomes such a habit that we don't even think about it anymore. But if you want to live a meaningful life and you want to actually make a change and a difference in your life, your children's lives, this world, the only way to start doing it is getting awareness to what is it that you really want and what you don't.
Yeah. And love that because, like, getting in touch with what your desires are, like, really asking yourself what you want and checking in with what you're not okay with anymore,
Mhm.
right? That is so key. And sometimes that does create some friction in very, very important relationships. But I always say too that if those people really, really cherish you and they really do want a relationship with you, they show up
Yep,
in those moments, right? They
they do.
absolutely do. They absolutely do. So I'm like what I'm hearing you say is there's, you know, checking in with your desires. One of mine is like that deep, deep self-respect, right? Making sure that you've got
Yeah,
some crazy high self-respect. And that self-love, that self-trust, all
yeah,
those things, those are all really, really amazing and incredible sexual boundaries because they create safety for us in the sexual realm. They absolutely
yeah.
do. And our creation realm. So,
And being present is so key because how many times you hear about the woman that's having sex and thinking about the dishes she has to do, the laundry she has to do, right?
mm-hmm,
If you can't be present in your own body,
that's trauma.
you're not present in your life either.
Mm-mm.
And it seems like it's so much easier these days not to be present. You have a phone in your hand, You have so many things going on all the time. It's so easy to just step outside of you.
I
But the
agree.
more of you can be in your body, the more of you'll value, and you won't have to look outside of it for validation.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's a great place to end. So, more, where do people find you if they want help healing their sexual trauma, if they want to help, if they want help, opening up their creative centers? Where do they find you if they want some help?
So my company's name is Morph Healing. It's really morph into you. So you can find me at Mor Yelvington on Instagram, or Morph Healing is my website. And also on my podcast, Moms Talk Sex, which is on all the platforms. And on YouTube, I'm everywhere. You can just find me, just look for more, and I'll be there.
Look for more and you'll get more.
Yes,
I love it.
always.
I love it. I love it. Go check out Moms Talk Sex, guys. Go check out Moore's YouTube channel and definitely reach out to her if you guys are looking for a little help that way. Thanks so much, Moore, for being on with us, and we'll have you on again for sure.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you for having me.
You too. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, guys.
All right, Boundary Boss babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other boss babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, boss babes.